It's September, which means spooky season is finally upon us, and that means for today's video, we're finally covering Swamp Thing. But before we get into that, I'm your host, Justin, otherwise known as IDontBeatGames, and I'm here to bring that nerd culture content right to your monitors. But before we get into that, I need to mention, I'm using the first episode to talk about the show, so that means there's going to be very light spoilers, and that's really it. And don't worry, I'm not going to ruin the show for you. I'm not going to give away key story elements. I just need to mention one or two things that happen within the first episode so that way I can talk about it. I know it sucks and I usually try to aim to keep my videos spoiler free, but let's just get into it and have a good time, shall we? For those of you who have never watched Swamp Thing on DC Universe, don't worry. When it airs on the CW on October 6th, you're in for a good experience, especially for the Halloween season. In fact, I don't think I can say a lot of negative things about the show. The most negative thing about it is the fact that it got cancelled before it even aired. Yeah, that's right. This is why I want to make this video. I want people to watch this show, give it a chance when it airs during the Halloween season on the CW, and hopefully that starts a movement where we can get it renewed. Swamp Thing also suffers from the fact that they decided to cut the season down from 13 episodes to 10. So in the beginning of the show, it feels like everything is very well paced, everything is well thought out, everything is conveniently building to things that make sense. However, towards the end of the season, it feels like things begin to conveniently wrap up or suddenly end because of the fact that they got reduced from 13 episodes to 10. And sure, yeah, it sucks. It brings the experience down just a little bit, but the show's season is still overall very good and it's well done. And it's honestly shocking how good this show is considering the fact that we didn't get to see 3 other episodes for this season. And no, that wasn't a planned pun, it just happened naturally. But getting back to the show, I have to say, seeing certain storylines wrap up a little quicker than it was planned sucked. But outside of that, those are the only real negative things I can say about Swamp Thing. Before I head any further into the video, this is your heads up. I'm going to be doing light episode 1 spoilers and nothing more. And if you don't want to be spoiled, I get it, I totally understand. But before you leave, please feel free to leave a sub or drop a like, I would appreciate it so much. Now that we could get into light spoilers, I have to say Abby Arcane's a great main character. Despite having this virus going around Moriah, Louisiana, she does everything she can to get the right thing done. And when it comes to Abby, I have to say, she's this character that's not motivated by dumb things. She isn't this dumb damsel in distress. She's this doctor who's motivated by doing what she has to do in order to get the right things done, and that's what I love about her character. In most comic book shows, almost every single female character, or at least a large portion of female characters, they get portrayed as damsel in distresses, or that they need people to help heal their wounds and things like that. But Abby goes through these things essentially alone, and she does what she has to do in order to think of the greater good. And as a comic book fan, I have to say, it's refreshing. A lot of the girls who are in comic book shows, they get reverted into dumb roles or damsel in distresses or the most cliche things possible, and to see this character, Abby Arcane, be this badass doctor who is trying to solve a virus and get things done just for the greater good, it's refreshing. Speaking of refreshing, I don't know how they did it, but they managed to make the swamp such a great location. From the various angles they use in the swamp, from the way they shot it, the way they shoot people when they go out into the swamp, hell, even some of the angles they use when Abby is actually heading out to the swamp in the show, it's amazing. I don't know how they did it. They made that swamp feel so alive and feel so amazing and realistic, as if something really happened there. That's what's so cool about being a comic book fan. You get to see things that you would never picture in real life or in a movie or being well done even for a TV show, and it comes to life and you see something as rewarding as this, and you have to really sit back and be like, wow, they really killed it here. On top of that, a lot of the practical effects or even the CGI they have in this show, it is amazing to see some of the things that happen within the swamp and how they go about using the different powers of Swamp Thing, which, don't worry, we're gonna get into that very soon. It was amazing. I was sitting there like, man, how the hell did they do this? So I think it's time we talk about the creature from the Black Lagoon, right? Come on guys, you know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about Swamp Thing himself. This is technically the reason as to why I had to mention that there would be spoilers to begin with, because without spoilers, I wouldn't be able to talk about Swamp Thing himself. So to give you the short backstory as to what happens to Swamp Thing or how we get Swamp Thing to begin with, we need to go all the way back to the first episode, right? So in the first episode, Abby meets this scientist and his name is Alec Holland. So what we find out in the first episode is essentially that Alec Holland himself has also been investigating the virus that Abby has been assigned to. Alec himself actually tries to make a great impression on her, and guess what? He doesn't. He gets almost kicked out of the hospital, and it's funny, and he even tells her, "You're gonna need me," and spoiler alert, Abby does end up needing him because of the fact that he has extra information and data that she doesn't have about the virus. Long story short, things happen within the first episode, and then guess what? Alec becomes Swamp Thing. Now that I was able to cover these things, I'm gonna continue to now go back to spoiler-free thoughts. The relationship between Abby and Swamp Thing happens to grow at a pace that I thought was perfectly fine. I didn't feel like they tried to overdo things, I didn't feel like they tried to oversell things, and honestly, it was easy for them to fall into that trap, and I'm amazed that they didn't do that. In fact, one of the things I appreciated the most about this show was the relationship between Abby and Swamp Thing. As this relationship grows to become the vocal point of the show, I have to say the horror element actually helped this relationship feel believable. And don't get me wrong, I know you're probably thinking, how the hell would this ever feel realistic at all? What I'm trying to say is, thanks to a lot of things that they do within this show, such as the cinematography, or how they showcase Swamp Thing's actual powers when they're in the swamp, hell, even the way they go about using sound effects or background music, or hell, even the color filters within the show. These things that I mentioned actually help build the world up for Swamp Thing and make it a more believable experience and make it enjoyable for the viewer. And don't get me wrong, I get it, I know it has to deal with the budgeting for this season, and that might be a reason as to why it got cancelled. But what we have is an entire first season or standalone season. If it never gets renewed, it's worth it, and it's a great product overall. Now, I feel a little obligated to actually state this because of the fact I know some people have this phobia, but just to let you know, there are scenes within this show that have a lot of bugs. And I know, a lot of you are gonna be like, I get it, it's called Swamp Thing for a reason, right? I just wanted to state this for those of you who may actually watch this show and at least give the first episode a chance. Another thing I wanted to mention about this show is actually how they go about using science and how science heavy this show is. And I know what you're thinking, what does a person making YouTube videos have to say about the science for this show? And you know what? I'm gonna answer that question. Absolutely nothing, because of course I didn't know anything that was going on. But no, seriously, I'm not gonna lie, the science within the show wasn't all that hard to follow. They actually do a fairly good job of explaining the plot within it. However, as someone who isn't smart enough or at least have that type of knowledge to say whether or not the science was correct, I'm just gonna be straight up with you guys. To me, most of the science felt like a lot of the things were just like LOL comic book reasons. That's the best way I could put it. I'll give credit where it's due. The science wasn't overwhelming. It didn't make you feel dumb for not understanding things, and they do a fairly good job of actually explaining the things that were going on. Overall, what I'm trying to say here is that the science within Swamp Thing isn't overwhelming, and it doesn't bring down the experience by any means. As a comic book and as a DC fan, I can't help but wish that Swamp Thing gets more eyes on it this fall. Hopefully, Swamp Thing airing on the CW during the Halloween season actually helps the show grow a fan base. If you take anything away from this video, I hope it's the fact that you should genuinely give this show a chance during the fall. This show is perfect for the spooky vibes you might be looking for during the Halloween season, and overall, it's a great show. And honestly, this is one of the very few comic book shows that don't feel so comic booky, I guess, and it's one of those shows that people can actually get into. So if you couldn't tell by now, my biggest suggestion is watch this show. It's worth it. Hell, it's available now on DC Universe and you can watch it already. But of course, you would need a subscription, and I understand if you don't want to pay that and you just want to hold out for it to air on the CW. And I get it. If you don't want to pay that sub, it's totally understandable. And honestly, you only have to wait 1 month from now to watch the show on the CW. Hopefully on October 6th, you're actually watching the show and you're having a good time and you can't wait till the next episode. But until then, you're not only going to be waiting for the CW to air Swamp Thing on October 6th, but you're also going to be waiting for my next video. Because honestly, this just about wraps up the video for today. Until next time, I'm your host Justin, otherwise known as IDontBeatGames, and I'm here to bring that nerd culture content right to your monitors. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that sub button. I would absolutely appreciate that. If you really enjoyed the video, feel free to actually leave a thumbs up or a comment below. And if you did both of those things, maybe you want to watch my recent videos, check out these videos below. Until next time, keep it real with peace, love, and positivity.